Jonathan Hargrove, a lonely millionaire, hires a market vendor to be his girlfriend for the Valentine's Day ball. But he never imagined. He hired her just to pretend to be his girlfriend at the gala. But could a simple arrangement change the course of their lives forever? Before we continue, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching the video from. And don't forget to subscribe. Jonathan Hargrove sat alone in the grand expanse of his opulent mansion, a fortress of wealth that surrounded him like an impenetrable wall. The walls, adorned with fine art and the finest fabrics, shimmered under the warm glow of the chandeliers, casting a soft light that failed to penetrate the shadows of his solitude. Despite the luxurious surroundings, Jonathan felt an emptiness that echoed louder than the silence of the vast rooms. He was a billionaire, a man whose name commanded respect and admiration, yet he found himself yearning for something far more elusive than money could ever provide: connection. As he gazed out of the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the sprawling cityscape, he allowed himself to reflect on the relationships that had come and gone throughout his life. Each one was a fleeting moment, superficial and transactional, easily discarded like the remnants of a lavish meal. He remembered the glittering parties and the glamorous women who had graced his life, all of whom seemed to be drawn to him for the allure of his wealth rather than the man he truly was. The laughter of those evenings rang hollow in his ears now, a sharp contrast to the silence that enveloped him. He longed for authenticity, for a bond that transcended the materialistic nature of his world. Valentine's Day loomed on the horizon, a point of contention that stirred feelings of melancholy within him. The day was a celebration of love, yet for Jonathan, it served as a painful reminder of his isolation. The thought of attending another gala, surrounded by couples flaunting their affections, filled him with dread. He envisioned the endless conversations about extravagant gifts and romantic getaways, all while he would stand as an observer, a ghost in his own life. The weight of his loneliness pressed heavily upon him, and in a moment of impulsivity, he decided to take a step he had never considered before. Miles away, in a bustling farmer's market, Maya Thompson immersed herself in the vibrant atmosphere that surrounded her. The air was alive with the sounds of laughter and chatter, mixed with the inviting aromas of fresh produce and homemade goods. Her stall, adorned with colorful jars of preserves and fresh-baked goods, stood as a testament to her hard work and passion. With each customer that approached, she greeted them with a warm smile, her energy infectious. Yet beyond the cheerful facade, Maya harbored dreams that stretched far beyond the confines of her small town. As she arranged her goods, she often found her mind wandering to distant places where adventure awaited her. The routine of her daily life felt stifling at times, and she yearned for a taste of something greater, something that would sweep her off her feet and lead her to experiences she had only glimpsed in movies. While the farmer's market provided a sense of community and belonging, it also served as a reminder of the limitations of her current existence. She envisioned herself exploring bustling cities, meeting new people, and discovering the world beyond the familiar landscape of her hometown. Each day, as she served her customers, she secretly hoped for a chance encounter that would ignite the spark of adventure she craved. With Valentine's Day drawing near, the air was thick with romantic anticipation. Couples strolled hand in hand, exchanging sweet nothings and planning elaborate celebrations. The market became a kaleidoscope of love, with vendors selling roses and heart-shaped treats, and Maya couldn't help but feel a pang of longing. The sight of couples sharing tender moments only deepened her desire for connection, yet she remained grounded in her reality. Unbeknownst to her, a decision was about to unfold that would intertwine her life with that of a man whose world could not be more different from her own. Back in his mansion, Jonathan felt the weight of his decision as he scrolled through profiles of potential companions online. The idea of hiring someone to accompany him to the gala initially felt absurd, yet the thought of facing another Valentine's celebration alone propelled him forward. He clicked through profiles, each one blurring into the next, until one caught his eye: Maya Thompson. Her profile radiated a sense of authenticity that stood in stark contrast to the polished images of the women he had encountered before. The warmth of her smile seemed to leap from the screen, and for a moment, he felt a flicker of hope. Maya's vibrant personality shone through her carefully crafted bio, detailing her love for farming, cooking, and the simple joys of life. She spoke of her passion for her homemade goods and the pride she took in her small business. Unlike the others, who often focused on the glitz of high society, Maya's words reflected a groundedness that resonated with Jonathan. He found himself captivated not only by her beauty, but by the authenticity that seemed to radiate from her very being. In that moment, he felt an overwhelming urge to reach out, to bridge the chasm of their disparate lives. As he sat in his luxurious surroundings, Jonathan's heart raced with a combination of excitement and trepidation. Could this woman, this spirited farmer's market vendor, truly understand the complexities of his world? Would she see beyond the wealth and the facade to the man who longed for genuine connection? The thought of her laughter filling the emptiness of his mansion sent shivers down his spine. In a moment of reckless abandon, he made the decision to send her a message, to propose the idea of being his date for the gala. Jonathan leaned back in his chair, a mix of anxiety and anticipation coursing through him. The opulence of his surroundings felt both comforting and suffocating, a reminder of the life he had built yet could not fully embrace. He closed his eyes for a moment, envisioning what it might be like to share a night with someone like Maya, someone who seemed to embody the very essence of joy and authenticity. Little did he know that this impulsive decision would send ripples through both their lives, setting in motion a series of events that would challenge their perceptions of love, loyalty, and the hidden truths that lay beneath the surface of their seemingly different worlds. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the city, Jonathan felt a sense of determination wash over him. He was ready to step outside the confines of his loneliness, to embrace the uncertainty that lay ahead. The gala was just around the corner, and with the prospect of Maya by his side, he felt a flicker of hope that perhaps, just perhaps, this Valentine's Day would be different. Jonathan Hargrove stood at the edge of the bustling farmer's market, quiet and observant, a stark contrast to the vibrancy surrounding him. The morning sun cast a warm glow over the stalls, illuminating the colorful array of fresh produce, homemade goods, and artisanal crafts. Despite the cheerful atmosphere, Jonathan felt an unfamiliar sense of isolation. The laughter and chatter of families and friends enjoying the day seemed to highlight the emptiness of his own life. He was a man who had everything: wealth, power, and an impressive portfolio of successful business ventures. Yet all he could think about was the emptiness that accompanied his success. This was a world where connections were bought and sold, relationships were transactional, and loneliness lurked behind every door of his extravagant mansion. He had made the impulsive decision to hire a date for the upcoming gala, but now, standing here, he wondered if he had made a mistake. Then his gaze fell upon Maya Thompson, a spirited young woman tending her stall with an infectious enthusiasm that radiated through the crowd. Her booth was adorned with jars of vibrant jams and fresh-baked goods, each one reflecting her artistry and dedication. Jonathan watched as she interacted with customers, her laughter ringing out like music. There was a warmth about her, an authenticity he found alluring. It was as if she had stepped from a different world, one untouched by the burdens of wealth and sophistication that weighed heavily on his shoulders. As she handed a jar of strawberry jam to a delighted child, Jonathan felt a pull toward her, an inexplicable urge to bridge the gap between their vastly different lives. He approached her stall, the thrumming energy of the market washing over him. When she looked up and met his gaze, her smile was genuine, free of the judgment he often faced from others. It was refreshing, disarming even. In that moment, he introduced himself, his voice steady yet tinged with an underlying uncertainty. Maya's eyes sparkled with curiosity as she sized him up, her initial surprise quickly replaced with intrigue. He proposed the idea of her being his date for the gala. The words hung in the air, heavy with implications. He could see her hesitation, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her features as she considered the weight of his offer. Maya was acutely aware of his wealth, the tailored suit that shouted of luxury, the confident demeanor that suggested a life of privilege. Yet, there was something about him, a vulnerability that she could sense beneath the surface. Perhaps it was the way he spoke, the depth of his eyes that hinted at a longing for connection beyond the superficial exchanges of high society. Jonathan Hargrove was not just a billionaire. He was a man who craved understanding, who sought a genuine experience in a world full of facades. After a moment, she accepted his offer, her heart racing at the thought of stepping into a world so different from her own. It felt like a leap into the unknown, an opportunity to break free from the confines of her small-town existence. For Maya, this was not just about attending a gala. It represented a chance to experience life through a different lens, to embrace the unknown and see where it led her. As they prepared for the event, the anticipation filled her with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Maya stood in front of her mirror, a soft light illuminating her modest bedroom. She had selected a stunning gown, a deep emerald green that contrasted sharply with her usual simple attire. The fabric flowed elegantly, hugging her curves in all the right places, transforming her into someone who felt almost regal. As she slipped into the dress, she felt a sense of empowerment wash over her. It was more than just a change in wardrobe. It symbolized her desire to step outside her comfort zone and embrace new experiences. Jonathan, meanwhile, had his own preparations to attend to. He meticulously checked every detail, ensuring that nothing could go awry at the gala. Yet, beneath the surface of his meticulous planning, a growing unease gnawed at him. He was both exhilarated and anxious about Maya's presence. Would she fit in with his world? Would she feel out of place amidst the glittering elite? He had often felt like an outsider, even in his own life, and he wondered if she would experience the same dissonance. On the night of the gala, the grand ballroom was a spectacle of opulence. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over elegantly dressed guests who mingled with glasses of champagne in hand. Jonathan arrived, impeccably dressed, yet his heart raced with anticipation. When he spotted Maya across the room, he felt a wave of relief. She looked breathtaking, the gown accentuating her natural beauty and radiance. As they moved through the crowd, Jonathan was captivated by Maya's genuine spirit. She engaged effortlessly with the other guests, her laughter punctuating the air like a melody. It was a dance of light and shadow, as Maya embraced the extravagance around her while Jonathan felt the weight of his past insecurities pressing down. He watched her charm those around her, a striking contrast to the polished veneer of his usual company. Yet, as the evening progressed, Jonathan's insecurities began to surface, creating an invisible barrier between them. He felt the familiar pang of doubt creeping into his mind. What if she was merely captivated by the glamour of his world? What if she would eventually realize that beneath the surface, he was still that lonely man seeking connection, struggling to navigate the complexities of relationships built on trust and vulnerability? Maya, too, was caught in a whirlwind of emotions. The grandeur of the gala was overwhelming, and while she tried to absorb the experience, a part of her felt the stark contrast between her humble beginnings and the world Jonathan inhabited. She caught glimpses of others whispering, their eyes glancing her way, and she sensed the weight of their scrutiny. In that moment, she felt small, a fish out of water in a sea of elegance and sophistication. But as they shared laughter and danced under the shimmering lights, the connection between them deepened. For a fleeting moment, the outside world faded away, and all that mattered was the rhythm of the music and the warmth of each other's presence. Maya, lost in the moment, reveled in the joy of dancing with Jonathan, her heart racing as they twirled amidst the dazzling crowd. But just as she began to feel at home, Jonathan's internal struggle loomed larger. The ghosts of his past relationships haunted him, whispering doubts into his ear. He had been hurt before, and the thought of opening himself up to someone new was unsettling. He feared that Maya, with her vivacious spirit, would soon see the cracks in his facade and turn away. The evening's enchantment began to fray at the edges, as the weight of unspoken words and hidden fears loomed over them. Jonathan glanced at Maya, her laughter brightening the room, and he wondered if he was ready to confront the truths that lay beneath the surface. The tension between them thickened, an unspoken understanding that they were both teetering on the edge of something profound, yet vulnerable. As the gala unfolded, the atmosphere shifted. Beneath the glamour and the laughter, Jonathan and Maya were two souls seeking connection, navigating their fears and insecurities. Little did they know, This night would be the catalyst for revelations that would challenge their understanding of love and loyalty, setting the stage for a journey neither had anticipated. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, but both were ready to embrace the unknown, unaware of the twists that fate had in store for them. The gala was in full swing, and the grand ballroom sparkled with opulence. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over the elegantly dressed guests. Jonathan Hargrove, tall and striking in his tailored tuxedo, walked with Maya by his side, her stunning gown a cascade of emerald silk that flowed gracefully with each step she took. Despite the luxury surrounding them, there was a palpable tension in the air. The stark contrast between Maya's humble background and the extravagance of the event was overwhelming. As Jonathan introduced Maya to his elite social circle, she felt the weight of scrutiny on her shoulders. The sharp whispers and curious glances from the guests made her acutely aware of her outsider status. She tried to smile, to engage, but every attempt felt like a misstep. The laughter echoed around them, a sound that felt both inviting and isolating. Jonathan, though attentive, seemed oblivious to her discomfort, engrossed in conversations about business ventures and philanthropic efforts. Maya shifted nervously, clutching her clutch bag tightly, its metallic sheen reflecting the sparkling lights. She was acutely aware of the lavish gowns and designer suits that surrounded her. The women were adorned with jewels that glimmered like stars, and the men exuded an air of confidence that only wealth could cultivate. Maya couldn't shake the feeling that she was an imposter in this world, a fleeting shadow against the backdrop of wealth and privilege. As the evening wore on, Jonathan continued to showcase Maya, proudly presenting her as his date. He spoke of her talent at the farmer's market, of her delicious homemade goods, and her vibrant spirit. Each word was meant to elevate her in the eyes of his peers, yet Maya could see the flickers of judgment in their expressions. They regarded her with a mix of curiosity and condescension, as if trying to reconcile Jonathan's choice with their understanding of his status. In an attempt to fit in, Maya engaged in conversations about art, culture, and the latest charity initiatives. She spoke with enthusiasm, hoping to convey her passion for her community and the work she did. Yet, each time she felt a fragile connection forming, it would quickly dissolve into polite smiles and dismissive nods. The realization that she was being viewed through a lens of wealth and status stung more than she anticipated. With each passing moment, Maya's confidence began to wane. She felt the eyes of the crowd upon her, assessing her worthiness, and her heart raced with anxiety. She longed for a moment of solace, a reprieve from the scrutiny, but Jonathan was lost in a sea of conversation, laughing and mingling with ease. The warmth of his presence was comforting, yet it felt increasingly distant as she struggled to navigate the complexities of this elite world. It was then that the atmosphere shifted. The doors to the ballroom swung open, and in walked Veronica, Jonathan's ex-girlfriend. She glided into the room with an elegance that turned heads, her presence commanding immediate attention. Clad in a striking red gown that clung to her form, she was the epitome of sophistication and allure. Maya's heart sank as she watched Jonathan's expression change, a flicker of discomfort crossing his features. Veronica approached with a confident smile, her gaze sweeping over Maya with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. Without a word, she placed herself between Jonathan and Maya, her body language radiating a sense of ownership. Maya felt a knot tighten in her stomach as Veronica's voice, smooth yet condescending, filled the space. "Jonathan," she said, her eyes glinting with mischief, "I see you've found yourself a new plaything." The words dripped with sarcasm, and Maya felt the heat of embarrassment rise to her cheeks. She could practically feel the judgment radiating from Veronica as she assessed Maya from head to toe, her smile widening with each passing moment. Jonathan's demeanor shifted. He stiffened, caught off guard by the sudden intrusion. He tried to maintain his composure, but Maya could see the tension building in his shoulders. Veronica continued to weave her web, effortlessly casting doubt on Maya's place in this world. She brought up trivial matters, questioning Maya's worth and experience in a subtle yet biting manner. Maya felt exposed, the sharpness of Veronica's words cutting through her defenses. The laughter and chatter around them faded into a dull hum as the reality of her situation set in. She was an outsider, a simple farmer's market vendor thrust into a world that was not her own, and Veronica was there to remind her of that fact. Jonathan, however, was not blind to Maya's discomfort. He sensed the shift in the room, the way Maya's smile faltered, her eyes dimming under the weight of Veronica's scrutiny. In that moment, he realized he needed to act. The protective instinct surged within him, a fierce determination to shield Maya from this unwarranted attack. He turned to Veronica, the warmth in his eyes replaced with a steely resolve. He spoke with a calm authority that commanded attention, asserting his independence with each word. "Veronica, enough," he said, his voice firm yet measured. "This is Maya, and she's here with me. I've moved on." There was a moment of silence, a collective intake of breath from those nearby. Maya looked up, surprise washing over her as she witnessed Jonathan's defense. It was a bold move, an act that spoke volumes about his feelings for her, yet doubts lingered in her mind. Did he truly mean what he said? Or was it simply a reaction to the unexpected confrontation? Veronica's expression shifted, a flicker of annoyance crossing her features before she masked it with a saccharine smile. "Of course, darling. Just making sure you're not being taken advantage of." Her words were laced with venom, yet Jonathan stood his ground, unwavering in his support for Maya. As the tension hung in the air, Maya's resolve began to strengthen. She realized that she did not need the approval of Jonathan's social circle or the validation from someone like Veronica. Instead, she needed to embrace her authenticity, to show the world who she was, regardless of the judgments cast upon her. With the support of Jonathan's words ringing in her ears, she took a deep breath, steadying herself against the tide of insecurity that threatened to pull her under. She would not let Veronica's comments define her worth. She was more than a farmer's market vendor. She was a dreamer, a creator, and someone who was worthy of love and respect. As the night continued, the initial shock of the encounter faded, replaced by a newfound determination. Jonathan remained by her side, fiercely protective, and she could feel a deepening connection between them. It was a moment that would shape their relationship moving forward, a turning point that would challenge both of them to confront their insecurities and redefine their understanding of love and loyalty. The Gala, once a daunting landscape of wealth and privilege, transformed into a backdrop for their burgeoning romance. Maya, with her vibrant spirit, and Jonathan, with his wealth of experience, were beginning to forge a bond that transcended the barriers of their worlds. As they navigated the complexities of the evening, Maya felt a shift within herself. The doubts that had plagued her began to dissipate, replaced by a resolve to embrace her true self. She was not simply a vendor. She was a woman deserving of love, connection, and a place in Jonathan's life. And as they danced under the twinkling lights of the ballroom, she realized that this was just the beginning of their journey, one that would challenge them both and ultimately redefine their futures. In the days following the gala, the city unfolded like a canvas for Jonathan and Maya, vibrant and full of possibilities. They roamed through art galleries and quaint cafes, where the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the sweet scent of pastries. Each excursion deepened their connection, as they shared stories and dreams under the urban sky, their laughter echoing against the backdrop of the bustling streets. Jonathan found himself enchanted by the simplicity of Maya's joys, and in turn, she was captivated by the layers of complexity that lay beneath his polished exterior. Maya's laughter was a melody that resonated with Jonathan, a balm for his long-suffered solitude. He would often steal glances at her when he thought she wouldn't notice, marveling at the way her eyes sparkled with enthusiasm as she spoke about her farm, the crops, and the community she cherished. To Jonathan, her passion was a refreshing contrast to the cold, calculated world he inhabited, where people often wore masks of ambition and pretense. With Maya, he felt the weight of his wealth dissipate, revealing a man who yearned for genuine connection, untainted by ulterior motives. Their afternoons spent wandering the farmer's market became a ritual, a shared sanctuary where they exchanged ideas and dreams. Jonathan admired the way Maya interacted with her customers, her warm smile and genuine interest creating a sense of belonging. She moved through the stalls as if she were in her element, her vibrant personality lighting up the faces of those around her. It was a world so different from his own, yet he found himself drawn into it, craving the authenticity that saturated every interaction. As they sat together on a sun-drenched bench one afternoon, surrounded by the hum of the market, Maya opened up about her life. The tales of her upbringing, filled with both struggles and triumphs, unfolded like a tapestry. She shared the joy of her first successful harvest, the pride she felt when her goods were appreciated by the community, and the heartaches that came from watching her father work tirelessly to keep their farm afloat. Jonathan listened intently, his heart aching for the burdens she carried, yet inspired by her resilience. In return, Jonathan revealed the shadows of his past, the betrayals that had left scars on his ability to trust. He spoke of relationships that had crumbled under the weight of expectations and the constant pressure of his wealth. With every word, he peeled back layers of his persona, exposing the vulnerabilities he had long hidden. It felt cathartic to share, as if a dam of pent-up emotions had finally broken, allowing the waters of his true self to flow freely. Maya was moved by his honesty. She had always perceived him as a man of power and privilege, yet here he was, stripped of his armor, revealing a man who had been hurt, who craved acceptance just as much as she did. This moment marked a turning point in their relationship, a deepening intimacy that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. They were two souls navigating their own complexities, finding solace in the understanding that they were not alone in their struggles. Yet, beneath the surface of their blossoming connection, an undercurrent of tension began to build. The closer they grew, the more Maya felt the weight of her responsibilities tugging at her heart. She had left her family behind, and even though her time with Jonathan was filled with joy, guilt began to creep in, whispering reminders of her obligations. Each time she returned to her small apartment, the empty space echoed her internal conflict. She wanted to embrace this new chapter in her life, yet her roots were still deeply entwined with her family's needs. One evening, as they strolled through a quiet park illuminated by the soft glow of street lamps, Jonathan noticed Maya's distant gaze. She was lost in thought, her smile faltering as shadows flickered across her face. He reached for her hand, hoping to draw her back into the present, but she pulled away slightly, as if caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Jonathan felt the shift, a ripple of uncertainty that made his heart race. The phone call came a few days later, shattering the fragile bubble they had created. Maya answered with a sense of foreboding, her heart pounding as she listened to her mother's voice, tremulous and urgent. The words tumbled out, each one a blow that landed heavily in the pit of her stomach. Her father had collapsed while working on the farm. He had been struggling with his health for months, but she had hoped it was manageable. The reality was stark and unforgiving. She needed to come home. Maya hung up, her hands trembling as she turned to Jonathan, who was lounging on the couch, engrossed in a book. The cozy warmth of their shared moments evaporated, replaced by a chilling sense of urgency. She struggled to find the words, the reality of her situation crashing down on her like a tidal wave. As she finally spoke, the weight of her decision pressed down upon her, heavy and suffocating. Jonathan's expression shifted in an instant from curiosity to concern. He leaned forward, his brow furrowing as he absorbed the news. The luxurious world they had been exploring together suddenly felt distant and irrelevant. All he could think about was the pain etched across Maya's face, the fear in her eyes, and the weight of her responsibilities that threatened to pull her away from him. The thought of losing her was a sharp knife that dug into his chest, a visceral reaction that left him momentarily speechless. Maya felt the tears brimming in her eyes, the mix of emotions threatening to spill over. She didn't want to leave, didn't want to abandon the budding relationship they had nurtured with such care. Yet, the call of family was a powerful force, an unbreakable bond that tugged at her heartstrings. She could not ignore the urgency of her father's condition, the reality that he needed her now more than ever. The thought of her father lying in a hospital bed, alone and vulnerable, shattered any lingering hopes she had of staying in the city. Jonathan's mind raced as he processed the news, grappling with his own feelings of helplessness. He wanted to comfort her, to assure her that everything would be okay. But he knew that words alone wouldn't bridge the chasm that had suddenly opened between them. The reality of their worlds felt starkly contrasting. While he could retreat into the safety of his wealth and resources, Maya was faced with the raw reality of her responsibilities. As she turned to gather her things, Jonathan felt a deep sense of helplessness wash over him. He wanted to offer her everything, to be the support she needed, but he was acutely aware that some burdens could only be carried by the person who bore them. The thought of her returning to her small town, leaving him behind, was a wound that threatened to fester. He felt the walls of his carefully constructed solitude closing in, and for the first time, he questioned whether their connection was strong enough to withstand the trials that life was throwing their way. Maya packed her bag with trembling hands, each item a reminder of her life back home. The vibrant life she had started to build with Jonathan felt like a fragile dream, one that could shatter at any moment. As she glanced back at him, a mix of sorrow and determination filled her heart. She had to do this. She had to be there for her family. But the ache of leaving lingered, a bittersweet reminder of what she might be sacrificing. In that moment, as they stood on the precipice of uncertainty, both felt the weight of their choices bearing down on them. The path ahead was unclear, fraught with challenges and heartache, yet it was also filled with the promise of profound growth and transformation. They were two individuals navigating the complexities of life, love, and responsibility, and as Maya stepped out into the world beyond, she couldn't shake the feeling that their stories were still intertwined, even in the face of separation. Maya stood at the edge of her childhood home, the familiar sights and sounds swirling around her like a bittersweet melody. The scent of earth after rain filled the air, mingling with the faint aroma of her mother's cooking wafting from the kitchen. Her heart was heavy, torn between the exhilarating new life she had begun to carve out with Jonathan and the deep-rooted responsibilities that had pulled her back to this place. Each step she took toward the door felt like a step away from the vibrant energy she had experienced in the city, where the world had felt so full of possibility. As she entered the house, the warmth enveloped her, but it was tinged with the weight of her father's illness. The cozy living room, adorned with family photographs and handmade decorations, felt suffocating. Her mother looked up from the stove, her face lighting up with relief and concern. Maya could see the lines of worry etched deeper into her mother's brow, the subtle hints of sleepless nights and stress. It was a stark reminder of the realities that had always existed beneath her dreams of adventure and independence. The conversations that followed were laced with unspoken fears. Maya's mother spoke about the mounting medical bills and the uncertainty of their financial situation. Each sentence was a brick, building a wall around Maya's heart. She knew she had to do something, but the weight of her father's illness and the family's struggles pressed down on her like a shroud. The vibrant life she had glimpsed with Jonathan felt like a distant star, bright but unreachable. Days turned into a blur as Maya settled back into her role within the family. She helped with chores, cooked meals, and spent time with her father, who was grateful for her presence yet unaware of the emotional turmoil she was wrestling with. Each smile he offered felt like a dagger, reminding her of the life she had left behind. In the quiet moments, she found herself reflecting on her time with Jonathan, the laughter they had shared, and the warmth of his gaze. It was a stark contrast to the somber reality she now faced, and the longing for connection grew into an ache. As she sifted through the family's financial documents one night, her heart sank. The numbers were alarming, revealing a precarious situation that seemed to worsen with each passing day. Debts piled up like shadows, threatening to engulf everything her family had worked for. The realization hit her hard. If they didn't find a way to stabilize their finances, they could lose their home, their stability. The idea of selling the family farm, the land that had been in their family for generations, clawed at her insides. It was a legacy she had never wanted to abandon, yet the urgency of the situation demanded drastic measures. Maya's mind raced as she contemplated her options. The allure of Jonathan's world, with its glittering parties and lavish lifestyles, now felt like a cruel joke. She had tasted the sweetness of connection, only to be thrust back into the harsh reality of survival. She could no longer afford to dream about a future that seemed so far out of reach. The bustling farmers' market she had once cherished now felt like a distant memory, overshadowed by the grim reality of her family's plight. Jonathan, on the other hand, was engulfed in his own thoughts. Back in the city, his mansion felt emptier than ever. The luxurious furnishings, the sprawling gardens, none of it brought him joy. He wandered through the halls, the echoes of laughter from the gala still ringing in his ears, but the warmth he had felt with Maya was now replaced by an oppressive silence. He had expected her return, but as the days turned into weeks without a single word, uncertainty blossomed into anxiety. The loneliness clawed at him, gnawing away at his resolve. He found himself reflecting on Maya's decision to leave. The pang of abandonment lingered in his chest, a reminder of the intimacy they had begun to share. In moments of quiet, he replayed their time together. The way her laughter danced through the air, her eyes sparkling with life. He had glimpsed a part of himself he had long forgotten, a vulnerability that he had locked away behind the walls he had built around his heart. But now, with her absence, those walls felt like a prison. Jonathan sat on the terrace, staring out over the city skyline. The twinkling lights mirrored the stars above, but none of them could fill the void that Maya had left. He grappled with the nagging question of whether he had ever truly known her. Had he been drawn to her authenticity, or was she simply a reflection of his desire to escape the solitude that had suffocated him for so long? The thought made him restless, as if he were grasping at shadows. He wanted to understand her, to reach out, but pride held him back. His mind drifted to the moments they had shared, the warmth of her smile, the honesty in her gaze. She had opened up to him in ways he had never anticipated, revealing dreams and fears that resonated with his own. Yet as the days passed, he felt the connection fraying, slipping through his fingers like sand. The realization that he might never see her again sent a shiver of panic through him. He was left with a sense of urgency, an instinctive push to bridge the chasm that had formed between them. Jonathan's thoughts spiraled as he considered the implications of her absence. He knew he had to act, to confront his own fears and the lingering questions that plagued him. The city, with all its distractions, began to feel like a labyrinth, a place where he could lose himself or find clarity. He needed to understand the truth behind Maya's departure, to acknowledge the vulnerability that had blossomed between them. As he resolved to reach out, the image of Maya's laughter lingered in his mind, a beacon guiding him through the haze of uncertainty. He would not let fear dictate his actions any longer. He would seek her out, unearth the truth, and perhaps, in doing so, find a path back to the connection they had begun to forge. The world around him faded into a blur as he focused on the one thing that truly mattered, Maya. Maya stepped off the train and into the bustling city, her heart racing with the promise of a new chapter. The skyscrapers loomed above her like silent guardians, a stark reminder of the life she had temporarily left behind in her small town. She felt the weight of her responsibilities tugging at her, but the thrill of being back in Jonathan's world enveloped her like a warm embrace. Yet, as she navigated the crowded streets, a sense of trepidation lingered, a whisper of uncertainty that begged her to be cautious. As she entered the farmer's market where she had first met Jonathan, her senses ignited with vibrant colors and enticing aromas. The sun streamed through the canopy of awnings, casting playful shadows on the ground. Vendors called out their wares, and laughter echoed in the air. But Maya's heart was not in the festivities. She was still grappling with the revelation of her father's health crisis and the struggles that lay ahead for her family. In the midst of this lively atmosphere, her mind drifted back to Jonathan and the connection they had begun to forge. While browsing through her usual stalls, Maya caught snippets of conversations that made her pause. A group of local activists stood near a produce stand, their voices low but charged with urgency. Intrigued, she edged closer, trying to discern the details. They spoke of a corporation linked to the Hargrove family, detailing unethical practices that had long plagued the community. The words environmental destruction, exploitation, and profit over people floated through the air, each syllable laced with indignation. The more she listened, the more her stomach twisted into knots. The activists were discussing plans to confront the Hargrove family about their alleged involvement in projects that had harmed local farmers and their livelihoods. Maya's heart sank as she realized the implications. Jonathan, the man who had taken her by surprise with his kindness and vulnerability, was intrinsically tied to the very problem she had come to escape. The contrast between her idyllic memories of him and the harsh reality of his family's actions felt like a chasm opening beneath her feet. How could she have been so blind? Maya's mind raced as she considered her next steps. If she confronted Jonathan, could she still trust him? The connection they had been building felt too fragile to withstand such a seismic revelation. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come, and made her way to Jonathan's penthouse, where they had shared so many laughs and dreams. When she arrived, Jonathan welcomed her with open arms, his smile warm and genuine. But as they embraced, Maya felt a cold wave of conflict wash over her. There was an unspoken tension hanging in the air, a heaviness that neither of them could pinpoint. They sat together on the plush sofa, the city skyline painting a breathtaking backdrop through the floor-to-ceiling windows, but the beauty of the view was lost on her. Maya took a moment to gather her thoughts, her heart pounding in her chest. She had to address the elephant in the room, even if it meant shattering the fragile bubble they had created. As Jonathan spoke about his day, sharing mundane details that should have made her smile, she felt herself drifting further away. The words she had rehearsed in her mind felt insurmountable, yet she knew she could not hide from the truth any longer. With a deep breath, she interrupted him, her voice steady but laced with determination. She laid bare the conversation she had overheard, the accusations directed at his family, and the impact those actions had on her community. The words spilled out of her, fueled by anger and betrayal. She could see the surprise etched across Jonathan's face, his jovial demeanor replaced by confusion and hurt. In that moment, the atmosphere shifted. Jonathan's expression morphed from shock to disbelief as he processed her words. He had built a life insulated from the realities of his family's business dealings, blind to the repercussions that had rippled through the lives of those less fortunate. Maya watched as the realization dawned on him, the weight of her accusations settling heavily in the silence that followed. The tension between them crackled like electricity, each unspoken word hanging in the air. Maya's heart ached as she saw Jonathan's vulnerability laid bare, the man she had come to care for now grappling with the shadows of his lineage. She felt a pang of sympathy for him, but it was overshadowed by her own pain and disappointment. How could she reconcile the man she had grown fond of with the legacy of exploitation he represented? Jonathan's eyes searched hers, seeking understanding, but the depth of her betrayal cut deeper than he anticipated. He had prided himself on being different from his family, but now he was forced to confront the reality that his wealth had come at a cost. The silence extended, stretching into an uncomfortable abyss. Maya felt her heart breaking, the dream of a shared future slipping through her fingers like grains of sand. In the days that followed, Jonathan was consumed by a whirlwind of emotions. He had never been one to shun responsibility, but the truths Maya had laid bare forced him to confront the darker side of his family's empire. He spent sleepless nights poring over documents, tracing the connections between the Hargrove business ventures and the suffering of those in his community. It was a bitter pill to swallow, realizing that his family's wealth was built on foundations that were anything but stable. Maya, on the other hand, felt adrift. The vibrant city that had once filled her with excitement now felt alien and hostile. She had returned with hopes of rekindling her blossoming relationship with Jonathan, only to find herself grappling with the reality of his family's actions. Her dreams of a life intertwined with his felt tainted by the shadows of corruption and exploitation, leaving her in turmoil. But Jonathan was not one to back down from a challenge. He began seeking out activists and community leaders, hoping to understand the full scope of the damage his family had caused. He listened intently, learning about the struggles of local farmers, the environmental degradation, and the erosion of trust that had taken place. As he delved deeper, he felt an overwhelming sense of responsibility wash over him, a desire to make things right. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden rays across the city, Jonathan stood on the balcony of his penthouse, contemplating his next steps. He felt the weight of his privilege pressing down on him, but with it came a flicker of hope. He envisioned a way to bridge the gap between his world and Maya's, a means to create something meaningful out of the chaos. With newfound clarity, Jonathan reached out to Maya, inviting her to meet him at the farmer's market. He wanted to share his vision, a partnership that would benefit her community while redeeming his family's legacy. As they stood amidst the stalls, the vibrant colors and lively atmosphere resonated with the dreams they had once shared. He proposed creating a sustainable market, one that supported local farmers and showcased their goods, melding their worlds into something beautiful and authentic. Maya listened, her heart racing with a mix of hope and skepticism. Jonathan's sincerity was palpable, and the earnestness in his eyes ignited a flicker of trust. They began to brainstorm ideas, weaving together their visions for a future that held promise. The laughter that had once filled their time together returned, mingling with the bustling sounds of the market as they envisioned a path of healing and growth. In that moment, they stood on the precipice of a new beginning, one forged from honesty and mutual respect. The shadows of their past loomed large, but together they had the potential to create something lasting, an endeavor that would uplift not only their lives but also the lives of those around them. As they exchanged ideas, laughter, and dreams, the chasm that had threatened to divide them slowly began to close, opening the door to a future built on authenticity, resilience, and love.